The stars trembled when the Drakari fleet moved through space. Their massive ships cut through the darkness like black daggers, each one bigger than a small moon. The largest ship, called Shadow's Fang, led the formation. Its captain, Vexthar, stood on the bridge, looking out at the void ahead. Vexthar was 12 feet tall and covered in thick dark scales that could stop most weapons. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light of the bridge. Sharp claws clicked against the metal railing as he watched his fleet move forward. Behind him, dozens of other Drakari worked at control stations. Each one was just as big and scary as their captain. The Drakari Empire had been growing for 300 years. They had taken over 70% of the known galaxy. Whenever they found a new world with intelligent life, the same thing happened. The aliens would see the Drakari ships and immediately surrender. Some species tried to fight, but it never lasted long. The Drakari were simply too strong, too fast, and too smart. On the bridge, Communications Officer Zektar turned toward his captain. His voice was deep and rough, like grinding stone. "Captain, we are approaching the next system. Our scouts report signs of technology and radio signals." Vexthar's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Another primitive species to add to our empire. Have they detected us yet?" "Not yet, Captain. Their technology appears very basic. Simple radio waves and primitive spacecraft. Nothing that could threaten us." This was how it always went. The Drakari would find a new species, and that species would become part of the Empire. Some willingly, most through fear. The Drakari didn't need to destroy worlds. Their reputation was enough. Stories of the 12-foot-tall scaled warriors spread, faster than their ships could travel. Vexthar remembered his first conquest 20 years ago. A species called the Vellani had tried to resist. They had decent weapons and strong defenses. But when the Drakari warriors boarded their ships, the Vellani took one look at them and dropped their weapons. It wasn't the weapons that won the battle. It was fear. The captain walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, stars moved past as the fleet traveled at faster than light speed. Soon they would drop back into normal space near this new world. Another day, another victory for the Empire. "Tell me about this species, Zektar," Vexthar said. The communications officer checked his screens. "They call themselves humans, Captain. They come from a world they call Earth. Single star system, third planet from their sun. Population around 8 billion. They have basic space travel, but nothing beyond their own system." 8 billion? Vexthar was surprised. That's a large population for such a primitive species. Most worlds we find have much smaller numbers. "Yes, Captain. They seem to breed quickly and spread across their entire planet. Our scouts detected large cities and extensive agriculture. They use most of their world's surface." This was interesting. Usually, primitive species stayed in small areas on their worlds. They would have maybe a few million individuals at most. 8 billion suggested these humans were very successful on their planet. "What about their technology?" Vexthar asked. "Basic nuclear power, simple computers, chemical rockets for space travel. They have sent a few small ships to nearby planets. In their system. Nothing that could reach another star system quickly. Weapons? Primitive kinetic weapons, some energy weapons, nuclear devices. Nothing that could penetrate Drakari armor or shields." Vexthar nodded. It sounded like every other species they had encountered. Large population meant they would make good workers for the Empire. Basic technology meant they might be useful for simple manufacturing. The conquest would be easy. "How long until we reach their system?" the captain asked. 6 hours, Captain. Good. Send word to the other ships. Standard formation when we arrive. Full display of power. These humans will surrender like all the others. The crew worked efficiently around him. This was routine now. The Drakari Empire had perfected the art of conquest. They would arrive in overwhelming force, broadcast their demands, and wait for surrender. It usually took less than an hour. Vexthar thought about the humans' large population. 8 billion was impressive for a single world. Most species the Drakari conquered had populations between 1 and 50 million. The humans had clearly mastered their environment completely. But that didn't matter. Population size meant nothing against superior technology and natural advantages. The Drakari were born warriors. Their thick scales could stop bullets. Their claws could tear through metal. They were faster and stronger than any species they had ever met. Size wasn't everything, but it helped when you were 3 times taller than your enemy. The captain returned to his command chair. It was specially built to accommodate his large frame. Around him, the bridge hummed with quiet activity. Screens showed tactical information, engine status, and communications from the other ships in the fleet. "Captain," another officer called out. "Admiral, HFY is requesting a status update." Vexthar pressed a control on his chair. The main screen changed to show the face of his superior. Admiral HFY was even larger than Vexthar, with battle scars across his scales and one missing eye from an old fight. "Report, Captain," the Admiral's voice boomed. "We are 6 hours. From the target system, Admiral. Species designation, humans. Population 8 billion. Technology level primitive. Standard conquest protocol is in effect." 8 billion? The Admiral's remaining eye widened slightly. "That's unusual. Are you prepared for resistance?" "No resistance expected, Admiral. Their weapons cannot harm us, and their ships are too slow to escape. This will be a routine addition to the Empire." "Very well. Proceed as planned. The Emperor expects this sector to be under our control within the month." The screen went dark. Vexthar leaned back in his chair. The Emperor was always eager for new conquests. Each new species added to the Empire's strength and resources. The humans would be just another entry in the long list of defeated enemies. 5 hours passed quickly. The fleet prepared for the drop into normal space. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and boarding parties stood ready. Everything was going according to plan. "1 hour until arrival, Captain," Zektar announced. "Begin final preparations. I want every human in that system to see our ships and know their fate is sealed." The Drakari had never met a species that didn't fear them. Today would be no different, or so they thought. The alarm bells rang throughout the human space station Frontier Base. Located at the edge of their solar system, it served as humanity's early warning system for anything coming from deep space. Commander Sarah Mitchell rushed to the main control room, her coffee still steaming in her hand. "What do we have, Rodriguez?" she asked the sensor operator. Lieutenant Carlos Rodriguez looked up from his screens with wide eyes. "Commander, you need to see this. We've got multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Big ones." Sarah set down her coffee and leaned over the sensor display. What she saw made her stomach drop. 17 massive objects had appeared on the edge of their system. Each one was easily the size of a city. "How big are we talking?" she asked. "The largest is approximately 15 kilometers long, Commander. The smallest is still 3 times bigger than our largest ship." Sarah had been expecting this day for years. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was arriving in force. Are they responding to our greeting signals? She asked. Negative, Commander. But we're receiving a transmission from them. It's a surrender demand. Sarah's blood went cold. Play it! The speakers crackled to life. A deep, harsh voice spoke in what sounded like dozens of different languages. The computer's translation. System worked frantically to decode the message. Attention, primitive species of this system. This is Captain Vexthar of the Drakari Empire. Your system is now under Imperial control. You will surrender immediately and prepare for integration into our empire. Resistance is futile. You have 1 hour to respond with your complete surrender. The message repeated in 17 different languages, each one sounding more threatening than the last. When it finished, the control room was completely silent. Commander, Rodriguez said quietly. What do we do? Sarah thought quickly. This was the moment humanity had trained for, even if they had hoped it would never come. They had protocols for first contact, but those protocols assumed peaceful intentions from the aliens. Get me Admiral Thompson at Earth Command immediately, she ordered, and send a message to all ships in the system, emergency stations, but do not power weapons unless ordered. We don't want to provoke them. While Rodriguez worked, Sarah studied the alien ships on the display. They were clearly designed for war, dark, angular shapes bristling with what looked like weapon ports. Their formation was perfect, surrounding the human system like a noose. Earth Command on the line, Commander, Rodriguez announced. Admiral. Thompson's face appeared on the main screen. He was a calm man in his 60s who had led Earth's space forces for over a decade. But even he looked shaken by what he was seeing. Sarah, we're tracking the same contacts. What's your assessment? 17 ships, Admiral. The largest is bigger than anything we've ever imagined. They're demanding our surrender within 1 hour. Options? Sarah looked at the display again. Honestly, Admiral, we could probably hurt them with our weapons, but we can't win a straight fight. They have us outgunned and outnumbered. Recommendations. This was the moment Sarah had been dreading. As Frontier, Commander, her word would carry significant weight in humanity's response to first contact. I recommend we try to talk to them, Admiral. These Drakari, they might be willing to negotiate. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution. Admiral Thompson nodded slowly. Agreed. Prepare a response. Diplomatic, but don't grovel. Humanity doesn't beg. The transmission ended and Sarah turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Park, prepare a response to the alien fleet. Lieutenant Jenny Park was the station's linguistics expert. She had studied every human language and had been working on theoretical alien communication for years. This was her moment. What's our approach, Commander? Park asked. Professional, diplomatic, curious. We acknowledge their message but request dialogue. Don't admit weakness, but don't challenge them either. Park worked for several minutes, crafting the message carefully. Finally, she turned to Sarah. Ready, Commander. Send it. The message went out across space to the massive alien fleet. Sarah had no idea how they would respond, but she was proud of what humanity was saying to the stars. This is Commander Sarah Mitchell of Frontier Base, representing the human species and Earth. We have received your message, Captain Vexthar. Humanity is interested in peaceful contact with your people. We request dialogue to discuss our mutual interests and establish formal diplomatic relations. We would welcome the opportunity to meet and learn about the Drakari Empire. After sending the message, the waiting began. Sarah paced the control room while her staff monitored the alien fleet. The ships hadn't moved from their formation, but their weapons weren't powered up either. Commander, Rodriguez called out. "The aliens are responding." "Put it through." Captain Vexthar's voice filled the room again, but this time he sounded puzzled. "Human Commander, your response is unexpected. Most species immediately surrender when faced with the power of the Drakari Empire. You request dialogue?" Sarah stepped forward to respond personally. "Yes, Captain Vexthar. Humanity believes that communication and understanding benefit all parties. We would like to learn about your people and share information about ours." There was a long pause before the alien captain responded. "This is highly unusual, human. No species has ever requested to meet us voluntarily. Most flee or beg for mercy when they see our ships." "We're not most species, Captain," Sarah replied. "We're explorers and scientists. First contact with an intelligent alien race is something we've dreamed about for centuries." Another pause. Sarah could almost hear the alien captain thinking. "Very well, human. I will come to your station with a small party. You will see why other species fear us, and then you will surrender properly." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her voice steady. "We welcome you aboard Frontier Base. Captain, when would be convenient for you?" "Immediately. Prepare your largest docking bay." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah and her crew staring at each other. In a few hours, they would be face to face with aliens who had conquered 70% of the galaxy. "Rodriguez, get our largest shuttle bay ready for visitors. Park, prepare the translation equipment. Everyone else, standard first contact protocols. And remember, we represent all of humanity today." As her crew scrambled to prepare, Sarah looked out at the alien fleet hanging in space like dark clouds. Somewhere out there, the galaxy's most feared predators were preparing to meet humans for the first time. Neither species knew that this meeting would change everything. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot seat of the exploration ship New Horizon, watching the massive alien fleet through the viewport. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was racing. 23 years of space exploration had never prepared him for this moment. "Jake, we're getting reports from Frontier Base," called Dr. Lisa Park from her station. She was the ship's linguist and had been monitoring the communications between the aliens and the human base. "The Drakari captain is coming aboard the station for a meeting." Jake turned to look at his crew. Dr. Park was busy with her translation. Computers, trying to learn more about the alien language. Chief Engineer Ben Carter was running diagnostics on their ship's systems, making sure everything was working perfectly. Security Officer Amy Wells stood near the tactical station, alert but not aggressive. Navigator Tom Hayes plotted emergency escape routes just in case. The New Horizon was a small ship compared to the alien vessels, but it was humanity's most advanced exploration craft. They had been studying a nearby asteroid field when the aliens arrived. Now they found themselves in the middle of first contact. "What do we know about these Drakari?" Jake asked. Dr. Park pulled up information on her screen. "From their transmissions, they seem to be a military empire. They've conquered most of the galaxy. Their language has words for conquest, surrender, and empire, but very few words for negotiation or peace." "That's not encouraging," muttered Ben Carter from his engineering station. Amy Wells spoke up from her security post. "Captain, I've been analyzing their ship formations. These aren't explorers or diplomats. This is a military fleet designed for intimidation and conquest." Jake nodded. He had reached the same conclusion. The alien ships were positioned to control every exit from the human system. Their weapons were powered down but ready to fire at a moment's notice. "Tom, how long would it take us to reach Earth if we left now?" Jake asked his navigator. 4 days at maximum speed, Captain. But those alien ships could catch us easily, if they wanted to. Jake made a decision that would define humanity's first contact with an alien species. Instead of running or hiding, he chose to do what humans did best: learn and adapt. Lisa, can you get us patched into the communications between Frontier Base and the alien fleet? Already done, Captain. We're monitoring everything. Over the next hour, Jake and his crew listened as Commander Mitchell and Captain Vexthar arranged their meeting. The alien captain sounded confident, almost arrogant. He clearly expected the humans to surrender once they saw him in person. "He's never met humans before," Amy observed. "He's treating us like every other species he's conquered." "Maybe that's an advantage," Jake replied. "He doesn't know what to expect from us." Dr. Park looked up from her computers. "Captain, I've been studying their language patterns. The Drakari use a lot of dominance-based communication. They expect other species to show submission through body language and vocal patterns. What happens if we don't show submission?" Jake asked. "Unknown, but based on their history, they probably use force to establish dominance." Jake thought about this. Humanity had spent thousands of years learning to deal with predators. From ancient times when humans fought saber-toothed cats and cave bears, to modern times when they studied sharks and lions. The key was understanding predator behavior. "Amy, what's your take on predator psychology?" Jake asked his security officer. Amy had studied animal behavior before joining the space service. "Most predators use intimidation first, Captain. They try to avoid actual fights because fighting wastes energy and risks injury. They prefer to scare prey into submission." "But what if the prey isn't actually prey?" Jake asked. Amy smiled grimly. "Then the predator has to reassess the situation." Jake made another decision. "We're going to Frontier Base. I want to observe this first contact meeting personally." "Captain," Tom protested, "that could be dangerous. If shooting starts, we'll be right in the middle of it." "That's exactly why we need to be there," Jake replied. "Someone needs to witness humanity's first meeting with aliens. And if something goes wrong, we might be the only ones who can get word back to Earth." Dr. Park was already calculating flight paths. "We can reach Frontier Base in 6 hours, Captain. That should put us there right around the time the meeting happens." "Do it. But keep us at a safe distance. I want to observe, not interfere." As the New Horizon changed course toward Frontier Base, Jake thought about what lay ahead. Humanity was about to face the galaxy's apex predators. These Drakari had conquered countless worlds and species. They were bigger, stronger, and more technologically advanced than humans. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him years ago. His grandfather had been a wildlife researcher who studied dangerous animals. "Son," the old man had said, "the most dangerous predators aren't always the biggest or strongest. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that thinks differently than all the others." Jake had never forgotten those words. Now, facing alien conquerors, he wondered if humanity's different way of thinking might be their greatest advantage. "Lisa, I want you to study everything we can learn about Drakari psychology from their communications," Jake ordered. "Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might help us understand how they think." "Already on it, Captain. Their language suggests they think in very black and white terms. Predator and prey, conqueror and conquered, strong and weak." "What about concepts, like cooperation or mutual benefit?" "Those concepts exist in their language, but only in the context of relationships between Drakari. They don't seem to apply them to other species." This was valuable information. The Drakari saw the universe as divided between themselves and everyone else. They were the predators and all other species were prey. "Ben, how are our systems?" Jake asked his engineer. "All green, Captain. Weapons are powered down but ready. Shields are at minimal power to avoid looking threatening. If we need to run, we can be at maximum speed in 30 seconds. Good. Amy, what's our best defensive posture if things go badly? Stay mobile. Avoid direct confrontation. Use our size advantage to maneuver around their larger ships. Their weapons are powerful, but they're designed for fighting big targets." Jake felt proud of his crew. They were scared but thinking clearly. They were preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. It was very human behavior. "4 hours to Frontier Base, Captain," Tom announced. "Take us in carefully, Tom. Let's go see how humans and Drakari get along." As the New Horizon flew through space toward the most important meeting in human history, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. The galaxy's apex predators were about to meet humanity. Neither species knew that the concept of apex predator was about to become much more complicated. Captain Vexithar studied the humans across the conference table with new understanding. Everything about their behavior made sense now that he recognized them as fellow apex predators. Their calm confidence, their analytical questions, their refusal to show submission. It was all predator behavior. "Commander Mitchell," he said slowly, "I need to understand something. You said humans eliminated other apex predators on your world. How?" Dr. Park exchanged glances with the commander before answering. "Through a combination of factors, Captain. We outcompeted them for resources. We eliminated their prey animals, and when necessary, we hunted them directly." "You hunted other apex predators?" "When they threatened human settlements or livestock, yes," Amy Wells confirmed. "We drove several species to extinction through systematic hunting campaigns. Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up more data. The last major predators on Earth, wolves, bears, big cats, survived only in areas where humans allowed them to exist." Vexithar felt a chill run through his scales. "You exterminated your competition." "Not intentionally in most cases, Commander," Mitchell said carefully. "But the result was the same. Humans became the sole apex predator species on Earth." Sergeant Krelthak leaned forward. "How many species did you eliminate?" "Directly? Perhaps a dozen major predator species," Dr. Park replied. "Indirectly, through habitat destruction and competition for resources, hundreds of species over the past 10,000 years." The conference room fell silent. Vexthar was processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic conquest. The Drakari had conquered hundreds of species, but they had never exterminated entire predator populations. They used other species as workers and resources. "Why didn't you preserve them?" Warrior Telvax asked. "Other predators could have been useful." "We tried," Dr. Park explained. "In recent centuries, humans have worked to preserve remaining predator species, but by then, most were already extinct or nearly extinct." Amy Wells added context. "Early, humans were focused on survival. Other predators were seen as direct threats to human children and food sources. Elimination seemed like the logical solution. You prioritized your species' survival over all others," Vexthar observed. "Yes," Commander Mitchell admitted, "though we've learned to regret some of those decisions." Vexithar thought about this revelation. Humans had done what the Drakari had never needed to do. They had completely eliminated their apex predator competition. It suggested a level of efficiency and ruthlessness that was impressive and disturbing. "Captain," Dr. Park said, May I ask about Drakari relationships with other predator species you've encountered? We have encountered a few aggressive species over the centuries, Vexthar replied. Most were incorporated into the Empire as warrior castes. Others were relocated to worlds where they couldn't threaten Imperial interests. But you never eliminated them entirely? No. The Empire values diversity of useful traits. Commander Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. Different approaches to the same challenge. You conquered and controlled. We eliminated and replaced. Vexithar was beginning to understand that humans represented something unprecedented in his experience. Every other species the Drakari had encountered fell into predictable categories. Prey species that surrendered immediately, or aggressive species that fought briefly before being overwhelmed. Humans were different. They were apex predators who had already proven their ability to eliminate competition. They weren't afraid of the Drakari because they had faced and defeated threats before. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Vexthar said, show me human military capabilities. Rodriguez looked to Commander Mitchell, who nodded. The display changed to show human spacecraft and weapons systems. Our technology is primitive compared to yours, Rodriguez admitted, but we've designed our military around human strengths, mobility, endurance, and adaptability. The display showed small, fast human ships designed for hit-and-run tactics. Their weapons were less powerful than Drakari systems, but they could be deployed quickly and in large numbers. You plan to swarm us, Sergeant Krelthak observed. If necessary, Amy Wells confirmed. Individual humans can't match individual. Drakari in direct combat, but we're very good at asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare? Dr. Park explained. Fighting in ways that negate your opponent's advantages while maximizing your own. Humans have thousands of years of experience fighting larger, stronger enemies. Vexithar studied the tactical data. Human military doctrine emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming numbers at the point of attack. It was eerily similar to how early humans had hunted megafauna, small groups coordinating to bring down much larger prey. You would target our supply lines, he realized. Among other things, Commander Mitchell said diplomatically, our isolated ships and outposts, Warrior Telvax added. We would focus on making the cost of conquest higher than the value of victory, Amy Wells explained. Vexthar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, uncertainty about the outcome of a potential conflict. The Drakari could certainly defeat humanity in direct battle, but humans wouldn't fight directly. They would fight like the persistence hunters they had evolved to be, wearing down their opponents over time until victory became impossible. How long would you be willing to fight? He asked. As long as necessary, Commander Mitchell replied simply. Even if the cost was enormous? Especially then, Dr. Park said. Human history shows that we become more determined when the stakes are highest. Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up more historical data. Captain, humans have fought wars lasting decades or even centuries. We've continued fighting even after losing most of our military forces in major cities. You never surrender, Vexthar stated. Some individuals surrender, Amy Wells acknowledged. But our species as a whole? Never completely. There are always humans who refuse to give up. Vexithar looked around the table at these 6 small aliens who had just described a defensive strategy that could potentially bog down the Drakari Empire for decades. They weren't boasting or threatening. They were simply explaining how humans approached existential threats. Captain, Commander Mitchell said quietly, we don't want to fight you. We'd much rather find ways to coexist peacefully. But we thought, You should understand what resistance would look like if peaceful coexistence isn't possible. For the first time in his career as a conquest specialist, Captain Vexthar was facing a species that might be more trouble to conquer than they were worth. These humans had evolved strategies that could turn a quick victory into a prolonged nightmare. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "A different kind of relationship," Mitchell replied. "Not conqueror and conquered, but equals working together for mutual benefit." Vexthar realized he was about to make the most important decision of his career. Everything he had learned about humans suggested they were serious about both their desire for peace and their willingness to fight if necessary. The galaxy's apex predator had just met another apex predator. What happened next would determine the future of both species. Captain Vexthar sat back in his chair, processing what he had learned about human evolution. Dr. Park's presentation had shaken his understanding of these small aliens. The holographic displays still showed images of primitive humans hunting, creatures many times their size. "Dr. Park," he said carefully, "show me more about this persistence hunting." Dr. Park activated another series of displays. "Certainly, Captain. Human ancestors could run continuously for hours or even days. We would track wounded animals across vast distances until they couldn't run anymore. The images showed humans following blood trails across endless landscapes, never stopping, never giving up. Vexthar had seen similar behavior in a few apex predator species, but never in such small creatures. "How far could your ancestors travel?" Sergeant Krelthak asked. "Our best runners today can cover over 100 miles without stopping," Amy Wells answered. "Our ancestors could probably go even further when their survival depended on it." Warrior Telvax leaned forward. "Without vehicles? On foot?" "On foot," Commander Mitchell confirmed. "Humans are built for endurance. We can outlast almost any creature on our planet over long distances." Vexithar thought about the implications. Drakari were powerful sprinters who could move extremely fast for short periods. But humans were describing the ability to pursue prey until it died of exhaustion. It was a different kind of predatory strategy, but equally effective. "What other hunting methods did your species use?" he asked. Dr. Park pulled up more historical data. "Tool use was crucial. Our ancestors couldn't kill large prey with bare hands, so they developed weapons: spears, arrows, traps, coordinated group attacks. The display showed early humans working together to kill a massive woolly mammoth. Dozens of small figures surrounded the giant creature, attacking from all sides with primitive spears. One human couldn't kill a mammoth, Dr. Park explained, but 20 humans working together could bring down anything. Cooperation, Vexithar mused. Drakari are individual hunters. We don't need assistance to kill our prey. Different evolutionary pressures, Commander Mitchell observed. Your species evolved individual strength. Ours evolved group intelligence and endurance. Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. "Captain, may I ask about Drakari hunting behavior? We're curious about your predatory strategies." Vexithar found himself answering automatically. "Drakari hunt alone or in small groups. We rely on strength, speed, and natural weapons. Most prey animals flee when they see us coming." "What happens if prey doesn't flee?" Amy Wells asked quietly. "It dies quickly," Sergeant Krelthak answered bluntly. "We prefer intimidation to actual violence," Vexthar added. "Dead prey provides less value than surrendered prey." Dr. Park made more notes. "So your species developed psychological warfare alongside physical dominance. Very efficient. It has served us well for 3 centuries of expansion, Vexthar said with pride. Until now, Commander Mitchell observed, the statement hung in the air like a challenge. Vexthar studied the human commander's face, looking for signs of fear or submission. He found none. "You're not intimidated by us," he said. "We're impressed by you," Mitchell corrected. "Your species clearly represents the pinnacle of physical evolution. But intimidation only works if the target species views you as a threat to their survival. We are a threat to your survival," Warrior Telvax pointed out. "Are you?" Dr. Park asked. "Captain, you said you prefer surrender to destruction. What would happen to humanity if we joined your empire?" Vexithar considered the question. "You would become imperial citizens. Your worlds would be protected. Your people would work for the empire's benefit, and you would be safe from external threats." "But we would lose our independence," Amy Wells stated. "Independence is less important than survival," Vexthar replied. "That's where our species differ," Commander Mitchell said. "Humans have never chosen survival over freedom. We've fought wars against impossible odds rather than accept subjugation." Dr. Park pulled up more historical data. "Captain, let me show you something interesting about human psychology." The display showed a timeline of human conflicts throughout history. Wars, revolutions, resistance movements against overwhelming forces. "Humans have a peculiar trait," Dr. Park explained. "When faced with superior force, we don't automatically surrender. We analyze the situation and look for weaknesses to exploit." "Even when resistance seems hopeless?" Vexthar asked. "Especially then," Amy Wells answered. "We've won wars against enemies with better weapons, larger armies, and superior technology by refusing to give up and finding creative solutions." Lieutenant Rodriguez added historical examples. "Small groups of human fighters have defeated much larger forces by using unconventional tactics, superior knowledge of local terrain, and sheer determination." Vexithar was beginning to understand why these humans weren't afraid. They weren't evaluating the Drakari as predators evaluating prey. They were evaluating them as competing predators assessing a potential threat. "You're planning how to fight us," he realized. "We're analyzing all possible outcomes," Commander Mitchell corrected diplomatically, "including peaceful coexistence, which we prefer. But you've already considered how to resist us if necessary," Sergeant Krelthak observed. "Of course, Amy," Wells replied matter-of-factly. "Wouldn't you do the same in our position?" Vexthar had to admit they would. Any intelligent predator species would assess threats and plan responses. The fact that humans were doing this proved they thought like apex predators. "What weaknesses have you identified?" he asked, genuinely curious. Commander Mitchell smiled. "Captain, that would hardly be good negotiating strategy to reveal during our first meeting." For the first time in centuries, Vexthar felt like he was facing an equal opponent. These humans were small and physically weak, but they thought like warriors. They planned like generals. They refused to be intimidated like apex predators. "Dr. Park," he said slowly, "what happened to the other apex predators on your world?" Dr. Park's expression grew serious. "Most of them went extinct, Captain. Climate change, habitat loss, and competition with humans eliminated most large predators." "Competition with humans?" "We were very effective at eliminating threats to our survival," she replied quietly. "Sometimes too effective." The room fell, silent as the implications became clear. Humans had outcompeted every other apex predator species on their planet. They were the only ones left. Vexthar looked around the table at the 6 humans, small, weak, primitive by Drakari standards. But they had survived everything their world could throw at them and eliminated every competitor in the process. "Captain," Commander Mitchell said softly, "we don't want to be your enemies, but we also won't be your prey." For the first time in his military career, Captain Vexthar wasn't sure what came next. The conference room felt smaller with 6 Drakari warriors sitting around the table. Captain Vexthar dominated one end, his yellow eyes studying the humans across from him. Commander Mitchell sat at the opposite end, flanked by her officers, and Dr. Park with her translation equipment. Security Officer Amy Wells positioned herself where she could watch both the door and the Drakari warriors. Her hand rested casually near her sidearm, but her posture remained relaxed and professional. Lieutenant Rodriguez operated the recording equipment, documenting humanity's first formal meeting with an alien species. "Captain Vexthar," Commander Mitchell began, "we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. This is a historic moment for both our species." Vexthar leaned forward in his reinforced chair. "Commander Mitchell, I think you misunderstand. The purpose of this meeting. I am here to accept your surrender and establish imperial authority over your species." "I see," Mitchell replied calmly. "Before we discuss political arrangements, perhaps we could learn more about each other? We know very little about Drakari culture and biology." Dr. Park activated her translation computers and pulled up her prepared questions. "Captain, we're fascinated by your species' evolution. Your physical characteristics suggest you evolved as apex predators on your homeworld." Vexthar was thrown off by the academic approach. "Yes, the Drakari evolved as the dominant predators on Draktor. We have no natural enemies." "Remarkable," Dr. Park said, making notes. "Your scales appear to be both armor and heat regulation, and your claws are clearly designed for both combat and tool use. How long ago did your species develop intelligence?" This wasn't going according to plan. Vexthar had expected fear and submission, not scientific curiosity. "Our civilization is over 10,000 years old," he answered, unsure why he was providing the information. 10,000 years, Lieutenant Rodriguez repeated with genuine interest. "And you've been exploring space for how long?" 3,000 years, Sergeant Krelthak answered before Vexthar could stop him. The warrior seemed fascinated by the human's questions. Commander Mitchell leaned forward. "That's an impressive span of space exploration. We've only been in space for about a century. Tell us, how many species have you encountered in your travels?" "Over 300 intelligent species," Vexthar replied. Then he realized he was answering questions instead of asking them. "But this discussion is irrelevant. All of those species are now part of the Drakari Empire." "Through conquest?" Amy Wells asked quietly. "Through the natural order," Vexthar corrected. "The strong rule the weak. The Drakari are the apex predators of the galaxy." Dr. Park looked up from her notes. "Captain, you mentioned that humans remind you of prey species. What characteristics make you think that?" Vexthar studied the humans more carefully. "You are small, physically weak, with no natural weapons or armor. Your technology is primitive compared to ours." "I see," Dr. Park said thoughtfully. "What about our eyes?" "Your eyes? You mentioned that prey species usually have certain characteristics. Where are human eyes positioned on our heads?" Vexthar looked at each human face around the table. Their eyes were positioned on the front of their heads, not the sides. Forward-facing eyes were a predator trait, designed for tracking and hunting prey. "Your eyes are forward-facing," he admitted. "Like yours," Dr. Park observed. "And like every predator species we know of on Earth. Prey animals have eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for danger from all directions. Predators have forward-facing eyes to focus on their target." This was disturbing information. Vexthar had automatically classified humans as prey based on their size, but their eye placement suggested otherwise. Commander Mitchell continued the discussion. "Dr. Park, why don't you tell Captain Vexthar about human evolution?" Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing Earth's timeline. "Captain, humans evolved on a world much like yours, filled with dangerous predators. Our ancestors survived by developing intelligence, cooperation, and persistence. The display showed primitive humans hunting massive creatures with simple tools. We weren't the biggest or strongest predators on our world," Dr. Park explained. "But we became the most successful through different strategies." "What strategies?" Warrior Telvax asked, clearly interested despite himself. "Persistence hunting," Dr. Park replied. "Our ancestors could track prey for days without stopping. We would chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion, then kill them with simple weapons." Vexthar felt a chill run down his spine. Persistence hunting was a technique used only by the most dedicated predators. It required intelligence, endurance, and an absolute refusal to give up. "We also learned to work together," Commander Mitchell added. "Human hunting groups could take down creatures 50 times their size through coordination and planning. The holographic display showed humans working together to hunt mammoths and other massive beasts. Small groups of humans using intelligence and teamwork to kill creatures that could have easily destroyed them individually. But most importantly," Dr. Park continued, "we learned to adapt. When the climate changed and the big game disappeared, we didn't go extinct. We learned agriculture, built cities, developed technology." Amy Wells spoke up. "Captain, you said the strong rule the weak. But what defines strength? Is it size, physical power, or is it the ability to survive and thrive in any environment?" Vexthar was beginning to understand why these humans weren't afraid. They weren't acting like prey because they weren't prey. They were predators who had evolved different survival strategies. "Your species survived by hunting larger predators?" he asked. "Among other things," Commander Mitchell replied. "We also survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, and countless other threats. Humans are very good at adapting to hostile environments." Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up population data. "Captain, you mentioned that most species you encounter have small populations. Humans number over 8 billion on our homeworld alone." 8 billion apex predators, Dr. Park added quietly. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Vexthar looked around the table at the humans. They weren't cowering or begging. They were studying him with the same intensity that he was studying them. For the first time in his life, Captain Vexthar was looking at members of another apex predator species. Not prey, not victims. Predators. "You're not afraid of us," he said slowly. "Should we be?" Commander Mitchell asked again. "You're clearly formidable warriors, Captain. But so are we, in our own way." Vexthar realized that everything he thought he knew about this first contact was wrong. The humans weren't going to surrender. They were negotiating from a position of confidence, because they truly believed they were equals. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "The same thing you want from us," Mitchell replied. To understand each other and find ways to coexist peacefully. For 300 years, the Drakari had been the only apex predators in known space. Now they had found another species that thought and acted like apex predators. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. Captain Vexithar stood in the transport bay of the Shadow's Fang, looking at the 5 warriors he had chosen for this mission. Each one was a veteran of dozens of conquests. Their black armor gleamed under the ship's lights, and their weapons were charged and ready. Remember, Vexithar told his warriors, we are not going to fight. We are going to demonstrate Drakari superiority. These humans will see us and understand their place in the galaxy. The largest warrior, Sergeant Krell-Thak, adjusted his plasma rifle. Captain, what if they try to resist? They won't, Vexthar replied confidently. No species has ever resisted once they see us in person. These humans are small and weak. They will surrender like all the others. Vexthar had done this hundreds of times before. The pattern was always the same. The aliens would see Drakari warriors and immediately understand how outmatched they were. Fear would take over, and surrender would follow quickly. The captain looked at his reflection in the polished metal wall. 12 feet tall, covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons, claws that could tear through steel. Yellow eyes that glowed with intelligence and predatory instinct. He was the perfect example of Drakari evolution, a natural-born apex predator. Transport is ready, Captain, announced the pilot. Vexthar nodded to his warriors. Today we add another species to the Empire. The humans will learn what it means to face the Drakari. The transport ship was sleek and deadly, like everything the Drakari built. It could carry 50 warriors and had enough weapons to destroy a small city. For this mission, it was massive overkill, but Vexthar believed in making an impression. As they flew toward the human space station, Vexthar studied the intelligence reports. The humans had built their station near the edge of their system, far from their home world. It was a smart defensive move, but it wouldn't help them now. The human station is small, Captain, observed Warrior Telvax. Their entire population could fit inside one of our dreadnoughts. Size means nothing, Vexithar replied. We have conquered species with massive cities and billions of individuals. Fear is the same regardless of numbers. Through the transport's windows, they could see the human station growing larger. It was built in a wheel shape, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. The design was efficient, but primitive compared to Drakari technology. Captain, the pilot called back, the humans are guiding us to their largest docking bay. They seem prepared for us. Vexithar frowned. Most species were in complete panic by this point. Ships fleeing, military forces scrambling, leaders broadcasting desperate surrender messages, but the human station seemed calm and organized. No matter, he decided. They will panic soon enough. The transport docked with a solid clang of metal on metal. Through the airlock sensors, Vexithar could see a group of humans waiting in the docking bay. They were so small compared to his warriors. The largest human was barely 6 feet tall. Remember, Vexthar told his team, intimidate, but do not harm unless they resist. The Empire needs workers, not corpses. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing air pressure. Vexthar stepped through first, his massive frame filling the doorway. Behind him came his 5 warriors, each one a towering figure of scaled muscle and advanced weaponry. The human delegation stood in formation near the docking bay entrance. Vexthar counted 6 humans, 4 wearing military uniforms and 2 in civilian clothes. None of them were running or screaming. Instead, they stood at attention like professional soldiers. The lead human stepped forward. She was a female with graying hair and calm eyes. Her uniform marked her as the station commander. "Welcome to Frontier Base," she said clearly. "I am Commander Sarah Mitchell. We are honored by your visit." Vexthar was surprised. Her voice was steady, and she showed no signs of fear. She was looking directly at him, meeting his predatory gaze without flinching. This was not the reaction he expected. "I am Captain Vexthar, of the Drakari Empire," he replied, his voice echoing in the large bay. "You will take us to your command center, where you will formally surrender your species to Imperial authority." Commander Mitchell nodded politely. "Of course, Captain. We have prepared a conference room for our meeting. If you and your team would follow me." This was all wrong. Where was the terror? Where were the trembling voices and desperate pleas for mercy? These humans were treating his arrival like a scheduled business meeting. Vexithar looked down at the commander. She was so small that he could have picked her up with one hand. Yet she showed no fear of his massive size or deadly claws. Her soldiers stood calmly beside her, alert but not panicked. "You are not afraid," Vexthar observed. "Should we be?" Commander Mitchell asked. "You requested a meeting to discuss our mutual interests. We're looking forward to learning about your empire." Mutual interests? Vexthar had never heard a conquered species use that phrase before. Usually they begged for their lives or tried to bargain for better treatment under Imperial rule. The human commander led them through the station's corridors. Vexithar noticed that other humans they passed showed curiosity rather than terror. Some were clearly scientists taking readings with handheld devices. Others were security personnel who watched the Drakari carefully but professionally. "Your station is well designed," Sergeant Krelthak commented to one of the human engineers. "Thank you," the engineer replied cheerfully. "We're always interested in comparing engineering approaches with other species." Krelthak looked confused. In 300 years of conquest, no alien had ever complimented Drakari engineering or expressed interest in technical discussions. They reached the conference room, and Commander Mitchell gestured to a large table surrounded by chairs. The chairs on one side had been specially reinforced to accommodate Drakari size and weight. "We took the liberty of adjusting the furniture for your comfort," the commander explained. "We weren't sure about your physical requirements." Vexthar stared at the modified chairs. Someone had analyzed Drakari anatomy from the brief video communications and custom-built furniture in just a few hours. This level of preparation suggested intelligence and adaptability. "This is thoughtful," Vexithar admitted. "We believe in proper hospitality for our guests," replied Dr. Lisa Park, one of the civilian humans. "Can we offer you refreshments? We're not sure what Drakari dietary requirements are, but we have several options available." "Refreshments?" Vexthar's warriors exchanged confused glances. In the history of the Empire, no conquered species had ever offered them food and drink. "We do not require your food," Vexthar said carefully. "Of course," Commander Mitchell said. "Please have a seat, and we can begin our discussion." As Vexthar settled into the reinforced chair, he realized something disturbing. For the first time in his career, he wasn't in control of a first contact situation. These humans were setting the pace and tone of the meeting. They weren't acting like prey at all. They were acting like equals. This was going to be much more complicated than he had anticipated. Captain Vexthar stood slowly from his reinforced chair, his massive frame towering over the conference table. His warriors tensed, ready for whatever order their captain might give. The humans remained seated, alert but calm, watching the 12-foot, tall alien predator with steady eyes. For long moments, the only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the space station's life support systems. Vexthar's yellow eyes moved from face to face, studying each human carefully. These small creatures had just explained how they had eliminated every competing apex predator on their homeworld and outlined a defensive strategy that could make conquering them more costly than valuable. "Commander Mitchell," Vexthar said, finally, his deep voice echoing in the conference room. "In 300 years of expansion, the Drakari Empire has never encountered a species like yours." "How so, Captain?" Mitchell asked calmly. "Every other species we have met falls into two categories," Vexthar explained. "Prey species that surrender immediately when they see us, or aggressive species that fight briefly before being overwhelmed by our superior force." Dr. Park leaned forward slightly. "And humans?" "Humans are apex predators who refuse to be intimidated and have already proven their ability to eliminate competition." Vexithar's claws clicked against the metal table. "You represent something we have never faced before." Sergeant Krelthak spoke up. "Captain, what are your orders?" Vexithar looked at his second-in-command, then back at the humans. "I am making a decision that will either be seen as wisdom or weakness by the Empire." "What decision?" Amy Wells asked quietly. "I am recommending to Admiral Thexvor that humanity be classified as a sovereign species rather than a conquest target." The four humans exchanged glances, but Commander Mitchell kept her expression neutral. "What would that mean in practical terms?" "It means the Drakari Empire recognizes human space as independent territory," Vexthar replied. "We would establish formal diplomatic relations and negotiate treaties for trade and mutual security." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. "You're offering us equality instead of demanding our surrender." "I am recognizing reality," Vexthar corrected. "Conquering humanity would be possible but extremely costly. The resources required to suppress a determined resistance movement across multiple star systems would be enormous." Dr. Park activated her translation equipment. "Captain, this is unprecedented. Why are you willing to make this decision?" Vexthar sat back down, his armor creaking. "Because I recognize fellow apex predators when I see them. The Drakari became the dominant species in this galaxy through strength and intelligence. Humans achieved the same result on their world using different methods." "Different methods?" Commander Mitchell asked. "You used endurance, cooperation, and adaptability instead of individual physical superiority," Warrior Telvax observed. "But the result was the same. You eliminated all competition." Amy Wells nodded slowly. "You're saying we're more alike than different?" "Exactly," Vexthar confirmed. "Both species evolved to be apex predators. Both species expanded beyond their homeworlds. Both species use their intelligence to overcome challenges." Sergeant Krelthak looked confused. "Captain, the Emperor expects us to expand Imperial territory." "The Emperor expects us to strengthen the Empire," Vexthar corrected. "Sometimes that means conquest. Sometimes it means forming alliances with equally strong species." "Commander." Mitchell leaned forward. "What kind of alliance are you thinking about?" "A mutual non-aggression pact to start," Vexthar replied. "Formal recognition of territorial boundaries. Trade agreements that benefit both species." "And in the long term?" Dr. Park asked. "Humans have capabilities the Empire lacks," Vexthar admitted. "Your adaptability and endurance could be valuable in exploring hostile environments. Your cooperation strategies could help us manage territory we already control. Lieutenant Rodriguez pulled up star charts. You're talking about partnership rather than conquest. I am talking about practical politics, Vexthar said. The Empire gains more from having humans as allies than as unwilling subjects. Amy Wells asked the crucial question. What happens if your superiors disagree with this assessment? Vexithar's expression grew serious. Then humanity will face the full military might of the Drakari Empire. But I will recommend against such action in my strongest terms. Because you think we could resist successfully? Commander Mitchell asked. Because I think the cost of victory would be higher than the value of conquest, Vexthar replied honestly. Humans would make the galaxy burn before accepting subjugation. The room fell silent as both species considered the implications. Vexthar was making a decision that would reshape how the Drakari Empire approached expansion. The humans were being offered something no other species had received, recognition as equals. Captain, Commander Mitchell said finally, humanity accepts your proposal for diplomatic relations. We're prepared to negotiate territorial boundaries and trade agreements. And if the Empire decides to proceed with conquest anyway? Amy Wells asked. Vexthar looked directly at her. Then you will face the consequences of being the first species to make the Drakari Empire reconsider the value of unlimited expansion. Dr. Park began packing up her translation equipment. This has been the most remarkable first contact scenario I could have imagined. It has been educational for both species, Vexthar agreed. As the meeting concluded, Captain Vexthar realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. For 3 centuries, the Drakari had been the only apex predator species in known space. Now they had encountered another, and the result wasn't conquest or defeat. It was mutual recognition and respect. The age of uncontested Drakari expansion was over. In its place would come something new, a galaxy where 2 apex predator species worked together rather than fought for dominance. Standing to leave, Vexthar looked one last time at the humans who had changed everything. Small, seemingly fragile creatures who had proven themselves to be as formidable as any Drakari warrior. Through intelligence, determination, and an absolute refusal to surrender. Commander Mitchell, he said, the galaxy just became far more interesting. Captain Vexthar, she replied, we look forward to exploring it together. As the Drakari delegation returned to their ships, both species began preparing for a future neither had anticipated. The galaxy's apex predator had faced a human and for the first time in 300 years chosen diplomacy over conquest. The universe would never be the same.